Mythvision Podcast is a popular YouTube channel with 55,000 subscribers. It explores religion, myth, history, and religious thought. We may be forgiven for assuming the host, Derek Lambert, is an actual historical person. Although, why would we assume that? When we look at history, we see Derek Lambert is an author born in 1929. His most famous series was titled the Blackstone series, which we'll return to later, although we might see hints at why Mythvision is exploring Islam with the clear parallels between Blackstone, the series, and the Blackstone of the Kaaba. What's more, we see the historical Derek Lambert wrote many books, some with religious titles, including Snow Angels and the Judas Code. When we further look at the YouTube Derek Lambert, we see a clear combination of two persons. One, the recovered addict who overcomes his addiction. The other, the YouTuber with 55,000 subscribers. Now, this might not seem like such a leap to assume that they're the same character, but when we apply Bayes' theorem, we see that addicts will generally recover at a rate of about 5%, which is unfortunately unlikely. And then 55,000 subscribers is a very high subscriber count, clearly fictitious. And when we look at the number, we see the number 55 has clear symbolic meanings, which we'll return to later. Now, what is the source of this recovered Derek Lambert? And what's the source of the YouTuber Derek Lambert? Well, let's look at history. We see a similar story with Derek Bennett. Interestingly, both named Derek. One has a history with alcohol, also a YouTuber. Strikingly similar to the story of Derek Lambert. What's more, when we look at the name Derek Bennett, we see Bennett means blessed. Derek Lambert, we see the clear parallels with lamb. Now, blessed lamb is a clear reference to Christ and Christianity, which both YouTubers feature on their YouTube channel. With this reference to Christianity in mind, we might see a reference to the Christian story of the crucifixion. Now, in the crucifixion story, we have two Jesuses, Jesus Barabbas and Jesus Christ. Strikingly similar, both have the name Jesus, and both are about to be crucified. Similarly, it's interesting that we have Derek Blessed and Derek Lamb, a clear parallel with Jesus Christ, with his counterpart, Jesus Barabbas. Now, returning to the number 55, 55 is a highly symbolic number. The number is a triangular number in that it's the sum of the consecutive numbers from 1 to 10, which may allude to the tetractries of Greece, and also a doubly triangular number. It's the 10th Fibonacci number and a square pyramidal number, with it being the sum of the squares of the integers from 1 to 5. Now, we've explored the combination idea where the YouTuber Derek Lambert is a combination of two figures. Now, we might see allusions to this in the number 55. 55 can symbolize man, in that we have the 5 points of man: the head, 2 arms, 2 feet. So the number 55 can symbolize two people standing together, which we might see the unity of multiple figures, whether it be the historical Derek Lambert or Derek Bennett and Derek Lambert of YouTube. Now, we might pause and say, but we have so much evidence. Let's explore that. When we see evidence of a historic figure, we normally look to coins. We look for perhaps hostile attestation. We look to Josephus or other early writers. Now, we might counter that we see veiled references in Josephus, although that would put us much earlier than the traditional dating for the YouTuber Derek Lambert. Now, when we look to the historic record in coinage, we see not one coin from history, either if we put an earlier dating or later dating, not one coin has Derek Lambert depicted on it. Now, what would be the reason? There's no reason why someone wouldn't mint a coin with Derek Lambert, if he existed. And where's the hostile attestation? We don't see any works referencing Derek Lambert. Now, what would convince me personally is if someone were to write a business letter without any seeming religious purpose for the letter and just say, hey, I was walking through the city, I saw Derek Lambert, maybe some hostile attestation. He was a complete jerk. Now, if we had that in the historic record, that would be the nail in the coffin for historicity, but we don't see it. What we do see is much later accounts, very much at odds with what we would expect to see from historicity. With historicity, we would generally see uniformity, which some Christ mythicists would point to the Talmud as showing a very different version of Christ. Here, we point to the YouTube comments section and see similarly very different depictions of Derek Lambert. Some depict him as a dolt who doesn't know anything and has never read the Bible. Yet, we see YouTube videos where he clearly has read the Bible. We see depictions of him as betraying Dr. Price. Now, this is an interesting idea in that I would put a much earlier dating on Dr. Price and wouldn't view them as contemporaries. Now, this alone should give us pause, but we, in his interactions with Dr. Price, we see also in the YouTube comment section very different accounts. Is Derek Lambert virtuous? Is he vicious? We're not sure, and I think that this should cast some doubt on Derek Lambert's historicity. Now, returning to Islam, we might remember that the historical Derek Lambert authored the Blackstone series. Mythvision has explored extensively the black stone of the Kaaba, and this might hint at yet another variant of the YouTuber Derek Lambert. We see some reference to he never goes after Islam, and yet he clearly does. Which is it? Under historicity, we would assume uniformity, and yet we see wildly different contemporary depictions. Now, when we take all of this into account, we must use Bayes' theorem as the most accurate gauge for historicity. Now, as we've previously mentioned, unfortunately, addicts only recover about 5% of the time. So under Bayes' theorem, we must insert 5% and then multiply that by the percentage of YouTubers that reach 55,000 subscribers. And then from there, we must multiply other unlikely events, such as how many people interview Bart Ehrman, how many people interview Dr. Dennis McDonald or James Tabor. Now, when we multiply this together, and I mean, we could add other numbers in there as well to make our case even more rock solid than it already is. But we see that this is quickly approaching zero as to the likelihood of historicity with the YouTuber Derek Lambert. So, with this in mind, is it impossible that Derek Lambert is an historical figure? By no means. Although we put his historicity at less than 0.001%, which is next to impossible, although we must remember not absolutely impossible. Now, when we compare the figure for the historicity of Derek Lambert to other figures, say Santa Claus, which has a historicity, as I've computed it, at 0.05%, Pinocchio, 0.005%, Neil Sendlak, 0.05%, and Jacob Berman, 10%. Now, we see other clearly fictitious characters that I think pretty much everyone will agree are fictitious. So why are we putting at such a high historicity Derek Lambert? Now, I know what people will say, but I have a personal relationship with Derek Lambert. Now, I'm not trying to get in the way of that. You know, your beliefs are your beliefs. I'm just putting this out there as to say, you know, this is my interpretation. Now, your interpretation might be something different. You know, you might have, you know, a personal relationship with Derek Lambert, and I am not saying anything against that. I'm just looking as a historian at historicity, its likelihood, its background, and looking at Derek Lambert from a higher critical perspective. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe, and also please subscribe to Mythvision podcast. Thank you so much.